Attraction. We know that speaking multiple languages is great for our brain and memory, but what if languages also affect how attractive we come off to friends, dates, and even life partners? As I've traveled, listened to, and learned different languages around the world, I've noticed that there's just something inexplicably attractive about languages and the people they draw us to. So out of curiosity, I wanted to dig into some of the research for this video to better understand why we're attracted to certain languages, which languages are most appealing, and what this means for you as a language learner. Chapter 1, Language Attraction Psychology. Let's start with a simple question. What language does this sound like to you? And what about this one?
If I'm learning the dog at your rest, ain't really stealing you call that trail, huh, Timbo?
If you guessed Italian and American English, you'd be right. But the thing is, none of those were actual words. And this is part of what phonesthetics explores. This field helps us understand 3 reasons why we find certain languages attractive, and a 4th that's interesting for anyone who likes music. But let's look at the first one. The cultural effect. Say I gave you 2 columns, one with words like sun, beach, heat, colorful, and a second with cold, organized, clean, hard. Now, what if I asked you to organize these 6 languages into 1 column each? Where would you put them? You can pause the video and try it for yourself, but many of you might get the same answer. If you organize the 6 languages somewhat like this, then you wouldn't be the only one. Dr. Vanita Chand of the University of Essex says that the attractiveness of a language often depends on how we think about the places that speak that language. And for Spanish, this often tends to be pretty warm. Dimitrinka Nikleva, a professor at the University of Granada in Spain, says that images of Spain and Latin America typically include themes like sun, beach, joy, celebration, and fun. And there's a popular belief that Spanish-speaking countries have vibrant cultures associated with rhythm, dance, and passionate, welcoming people. These aspects all promote a positive side of Spanish-speaking cultures, and in turn, they shape the perception of the language itself. Even simplistic stereotypes from movies and TV shows of Spanish-speaking characters as suave and charming also contribute to how the culture and language are perceived. And it's not just with Spanish. Cultural perceptions of France's ties to art have also painted a positive view of the French language in the US, for example. But on the flip side, historical tensions between the US and Russia have shaped why the Russian language may lack some appeal in certain parts of the country. So cultural stereotypes really affect our attraction to languages, but they don't fully explain why certain languages draw us in and others don't, until we consider the second effect. Chapter 2, the closeness effect. Imagine you're a Spanish speaker out traveling, you need help, and the only 2 people around are a Portuguese speaker and a German speaker. Who would you ask for help? You'd likely pick the Portuguese person, and this is partly due to the closeness effect. This explains why languages that sound like our mother tongue or come from the same language family often sound more appealing and draw us in because of their familiarity. According to Ethnologue, Portuguese and Spanish have a lexical similarity of about 89% because they come from the same Latin root. This means that if you speak Spanish, you might understand close to 90% of the words in Portuguese and vice versa. And if you look at the phrase, "Where do you recommend I eat?" it looks and sounds very similar across the 2.
¿Dónde me recomiendas comer? Onde você recomenda que eu coma?
But if we try the same for English and Spanish, the story is different.
Where do you recommend I eat? ¿Dónde me recomiendas comer?
English and Spanish are not as similar, so you'll find that Spanish and Portuguese speakers tend to like each other's languages in many cases. But then we hit a wall. When we actually survey most Spanish and Portuguese speakers, they usually prefer to learn English as their target language. So why is that? Chapter 3, the exposure effect. There's an old adage that familiarity breeds contentment, and it teaches us about the exposure effect. This is the theory that we usually find a language more attractive and less stressful to listen to if we've already heard it before, even if we don't speak the language ourselves. And English is a great example. As a fairly ubiquitous language, many people around the world find English attractive because it's common and globally known. In the news, on TV, on the internet, in the clothes we wear, English is the most popular language in 90+ countries, but there are some even more intriguing examples. In North American countries, many kids grow up being exposed to part of Japanese culture through anime and manga like Naruto and Dragon Ball Z. And as these art forms have become more popular, so too has interest in the Japanese language in these regions. And in Peru, Chile, and Argentina, we see a surge of interest in wanting to learn Korean, and this seems to mimic the rising popularity of K-pop groups like BTS and Blackpink. The musical case of Korean is particularly interesting because it hints at the 4th key psychological trigger. Chapter 4, the singing effect. Howard Gills, a professor of communication at the University of California, put forth the inherent value hypothesis that explains some languages might just be naturally more beautiful than others because of their sounds. And the singing effect takes this further to say that languages that are better for singing will be naturally more beautiful. For example, you might often hear that operas are better in Italian because Italian is a musical language. But what makes a language musical? Well, think about the emotions you get listening to this clip.
Oh, Romeo, Romeo. Wherefore art thou, Romeo?
And compare those to the emotions you get from this clip.
And has vowed to vanquish these venal and virulent vermin, vanguarding vice and vouchsafing the violently vicious and voracious violation of volition.
Which one felt more pleasant and relaxing? Likely the first one, and Shakespeare would say that this is due to assonance, which is a poetic technique that creates a calm feeling by using many vowel sounds in a sentence. And Italian has its fair share of vowels. Just look at the word aiuole, which is made up almost entirely of vowels. The bias for vowels can make Italian better for singing because it helps singers go through phrases without interrupting their airflow for consonants. And that singing quality carries through when speaking Italian, and it can make the language almost like a song to trigger the parts of our brain that love music.
Tutto, cioè mi sembrava la lingua perfetta, mi piace tutta la letteratura.
On the flip side, some languages don't sound as melodic. Languages that have strong consonant usage, like Russian, Polish, and German, they might not benefit much from the singing effect. Take a look at this German word.
Kraftstrotzend.
It means powerful and has 14 letters, but only 3 of them are vowels. Another side is tonal languages like Vietnamese, Thai, or Chinese. These can have a different tone for each word in a sentence. For example, the Chinese word ma, it can mean something like horse, hemp, scold, or mother, and it all depends on which tone you use.
Ma, 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 ma.
These different tones can make these languages overall more difficult for singing. So together, these 4 effects start to explain some of the psychology of why we like certain languages. But what's the list? Which languages attract us and which ones don't? Chapter 5, the Language Attraction Survey. Babbel, a language learning app with millions of users, tried to get to the bottom of the language attraction question. They sent a survey to roughly 15,000 Westerners asking them what languages they found most attractive. And guess which languages took the top spots? As expected, French, Italian, Spanish, and English. And then the list began to diverge after that. But there is an important nuance. Answers change quite a bit depending on who you ask. The National Academy of Sciences shared a 2023 study where 228 people listened to 2,000 plus recordings in over 200 languages, and they did this to discover what language sounded most beautiful. But answers changed a lot depending on what language the listener spoke. Chinese speakers preferred Mandarin and then English. English speakers preferred English and then Italian, and so on. When they averaged out all the scores, languages didn't differ by more than 2%. So while there are some general language preferences due to cultural perception, the true beauty of a language really does seem to be in the eyes of the beholder, or in this case, in the ears of the listener. So what does this mean for language learners? Well, speaking multiple languages does make people more attractive, but the preferences for specific languages change drastically from place to place, so the best thing to do might just be to choose the language that you would love to learn. And if that happens to be Spanish, then check out this app I built to practice speaking Spanish anytime, anywhere, to become more fluent through conversation. So I'll see you there, and hasta la próxima.